Today we want to talk about a plan. Not a conspiracy theory or a leaked memo, but a 900-page blueprint backed by billionaires, GOP think tanks, and the people that are running our federal government.
It's not just a theory. The pieces are already moving, quietly and efficiently. We're seeing its fingerprints on executive orders, policy memos, and legislation making its way through Congress.
The Center for American Progress estimates that if this plan is fully implemented, the average North Carolina family of four would pay an extra $2,700 in taxes every year. The plan also aims to raise the Social Security age from 67 to 69, affecting nearly 75% or 3/4 of North Carolinians.
Over 900,000 North Carolinians currently rely on Medicaid, and under this plan, all of them would be at risk for losing their health care, while 662,000 would see their prescription drug prices go up. Childcare support, gone. Student loan relief, gutted. Federal support for our public schools, eliminated. Under this plan, nearly 100,000 North Carolina students would lose their teacher.
The people behind this plan want to cut disaster aid to states that don't bend the knee. And after Helene and hurricane season right around the corner, this should make every North Carolinian nervous. The plan would handcuff FEMA, privatize flood insurance, and force North Carolinians to pick up the tab for debris removal, infrastructure repair, and any rebuilding efforts when the next storm hits. And you can bet it's going to hit.
This plan would strip more than 1.5 million North Carolina women of access to emergency contraception, forcing them to shoulder the health and financial burden of pregnancy alone. At the same time, it takes aim at our schools and libraries, threatening lawsuits against anyone, from UNC down to your employer, anyone who dares to say something they don't like.
This plan is terrifying, and it's already happening. The plan? It's Project 2025. And if you haven't heard of it yet, you will, and you'll feel it. Physically, emotionally, and financially.
Today we're going to talk about Project 2025. We're sitting down with someone who's tracked it, studied it, and literally written the book on it. David A. Graham is a staff writer for The Atlantic and the author of The Project, How Project 2025 is Reshaping America. Reporting from North Carolina, far from the D.C. Beltway, David brings a grounded, clear-eyed perspective to this far-right plan to dismantle American society as we know it. We'll talk about what Project 2025 actually is and why Trump is now embracing it after saying he didn't even know what it was. We'll also discuss the shift in Trump's language, the gap between crime data and public fear, the wave of anti-Trump protests, and why some North Carolina communities may face the next hurricane without federal help.
This isn't just politics. This is everyday life for many of us. Let's get into it.
North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray. Well, hey, man.
So we're sitting here talking about, do we want to, bring a copy, get a signed copy and all that? Because we're talking with the author today.
Yes.
And obviously I brought the book, right? And excellent book. Everybody should read it. But it was strange because it's not the kind of book you ask the author to sign. I mean, it's a great book, but at the same time, it's such an ominous book.
Oh, I was
right?
going to ask him to sign it.
I'm totally going to ask him to sign it. But I thought for a second before I put it in my backpack, is it going to be weird? Is it weird when people ask you to sign the project?
I'm happy to sign it. When I was writing it, I asked my wife if she wanted me to dedicate it to her. I thought maybe not.
Yeah.
She said, you can wait till the second book for that.
Yeah.
So a similar thought did occur to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. When we're done, gonna ask to get it signed. And but first, we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So. Folks, you've heard the introduction. Today we're talking with David Graham, and you live and report right here in North Carolina. And I'm curious, how is living outside of D.C., how does that shape your view of politics and journalism?
I think it's really helpful. There are times when there are things that people are talking about in D.C. that just seem totally irrelevant. And there are times when people are missing out on things. So I think it's useful for keeping some perspective. I worry that when you're inside DC, one of two things can happen. One, you get really cynical, which is understandable, but probably not very healthy. Or two, you develop this sense that everything is kind of a game and you're just there covering the game. And I think that's bad too. And I hope that being outside helps me avoid that a little bit. But also North Carolina is full of so many interesting and important political stories that I think I notice before other people do because they're happening in my town or just down the road.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I guess it would be if you were up in D.C. I never really thought about it that way of reporting on it like it's a game, where you kind of get into that like lobbyist feel, where you feel like you're one with, and you know how it moves and know what to look for and know where to go. And so I can see how being there, just immersed in it, would just really like screw your brain.
Yeah, and when people talk about it being like a company town, and it, so I lived in D.C. for about 4 years, and you go to a party, and the people at the party cover the government or work for the government or they lobby the government or they contract with the government or they're a nonprofit that, everyone is sort of involved in the company business in that way. So it's hard to keep perspective that way.
Yeah, I feel like unless you're like a Hunter S. Thompson type who just is part of the story, is living the story, is like, following the Carter campaign, living that narrative that he's writing about. If you're just a journalist, it becomes hard to observe and comment on the thing that you're in and surrounded by. You can't see the forest for the trees, right? So no, that makes total sense. How being down here, and I also think North Carolina, like we're at the crossroads of so many national issues.
Sure,
right. So many things. Ground. Yeah, I mean, in a literal sense, we are guinea pigs. I guess in a metaphor, we're not actually guinea pigs. In a metaphorical sense, we are guinea pigs. Pivoting to Project 2025, Democrats, I think worked really hard to make Project 2025 a focal point of the 2024 election. We heard a lot about it here locally. We had billboards that the county party put up trying to bring as much attention to it as possible. Because it seemed to me that the folks who heard about it, regardless of their political persuasion, weren't fans of it. Unless you happen to live in a basement and be like an ethno-white nationalist, like then it's your gig. But otherwise, like it's not a super popular idea.
Well, and not even on the Republican side, right? Because you would tell somebody on the Republican side about Project 2025, and they'd be like, "Yeah, it's terrible," but Trump said he didn't know anything about it, right?
And that was the thing is that as hard as the Democrats worked to make the race a referendum on Project 2025, Trump is working equally as hard to disavow it and to distance himself from it. So to start off, for folks who remember hearing about Project 2025 but are still kind of unclear through all the messaging about what it is, what's going on, can you quickly give us kind of your elevator pitch for what Project 2025 is and why it's important?
Yeah, so in 2021, the Heritage Foundation, venerable conservative think tank in D.C., asked a guy named Paul Dance, who had been in the first Trump administration, to bring together a bunch of people from across the MAGA right or the MAGA curious right to put together a platform and a plan for the next conservative president, whoever that would be. And so they got to work on this project, and it had 3 big prongs. One of them was basically what I talk about in the book, which is a 922-page plan for what the government would do under this president, both sort of organizationally and then department by department.
That you read every page of, by the way.
I did read every page of it.
Wow.
The second part was a database of people who would work in that administration because they thought the staffing in the first Trump administration had been bad, and they wanted people who had been identified and put their names in and had had some training and maybe were funneled into that. And then the third part was a 100-day playbook of draft executive orders and sort of day by day what we're going to do to achieve these things. And they worked with a bunch of organizations, about 70 contributors. They produced the document in summer of 2023, or published it, and then worked up this database and worked up this plan. And I think it has been a surprisingly prophetic blueprint for how the Trump administration has worked.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's never ceases to strike me that the thing that, like, I remember last year we did a video in June when Trump was first disavowing it, and I did a quick reel on social media that just showed faces and names of people who had a hand in crafting it, who were on his campaign team, and the implication being, like, if he doesn't know about it, like, he is the idiot that everybody, his opponents are saying he is, right?
Well, and this isn't anything new. The Heritage Foundation has wrote this since, like, Reagan, right? They've been doing this stuff.
It wasn't necessarily done with Trump in mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because they say no, and it was, they published it before he was the nominee. I think it's hard to imagine it working so well with any other Republican, and I think part of that is that every other presidential candidate has a wide range of things they care about, and they have advisors around them. And Trump cares about like three things. He cares about tariffs. He cares about immigration. He cares about retribution. But there's a lot of things that he's just not, it's not a concern for him. Mm-hmm. And so they, there's all these areas they can then come in and say, well, we want to do this in these areas. And Trump says, fine. But also Trump is willing to grab power and willing to do these things in ways that I think other Republicans might not have been willing to. So I think it's a really effective marriage for them.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point for me, which is that, Project 2025 is a rule book. It is an instruction manual for, in my opinion, like the mother lode of bad ideas. But Trump is not a rigid, rule-following, legalistic kind of guy. I mean, he's famously incurious and has the attention span of a coked up squirrel. So
he even falls asleep at his parades.
Yeah, exactly. He's falling asleep at his birthday parade.
It was boring. To be fair.
In fairness, yeah, we had a lot more fun at the No King's Day.
Oh, no doubt.
But how? I guess my question here is, Trump is so easily distracted, yet we have this plan that is very detail oriented. How do we square the document's ambitions with Trump's personality and leadership style?
Yeah, I'm surprised that it has worked as well as it has for that reason. And I think part of it is they're giving him the tools to do things like take over the DOJ, which he can then use to exact retribution. They're giving him the tools to fire a lot of bureaucrats, which he wants to do. And they're providing staffing for him to do those things. He was so hobbled in the first term by having people working for him who didn't know what they were doing, or by their own accounts where they were kind of to sabotage him or to be a break on him. And so I think they're filling that hole for him. He's getting what he needs out of it. And everything else is not a problem for him. And so they just take care of it.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like ChatGPT for everybody else, right? Like people will just, instead of doing the research or reading, they'll just go into ChatGPT, they'll get it, they feel smart, they're good to go. And this is kind of what it is for Trump. Trump was given something, and he feels smart because he has this. He didn't have to do any work for it, didn't have to do any research. And he's like, yeah, I'll follow this.
Plug and play.
Yeah, and wasn't there just an ad out, or not an ad, but a story out, I think it was in the New York Times actually, where it was talking about where this financial services, they were using ChatGPT for years, and now they're screwed because they just followed it and just blindly followed it.
Oh, no, I didn't read that.
Yeah, and it's just like,
this
and hopefully this is, well, not hopefully.
I think there's an irony there too, because so much of their critique is, the federal, the executive branch is run by these bureaucrats. Right. They're not answerable to anybody. It's not political control. We need to bring them back under control. And then what we have is a president who's not paying attention, and these bureaucrats are coming in and doing kind of what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the this is not an insight from the book, but it's an insight from one of the pieces you wrote for The Atlantic recently that I thought was really interesting. One of the things that separates Trump 1.0 from Trump 2.0 is Trump 2.0. The White House is filled with multitaskers right now, and you give some pretty incredible examples of this core group of loyalists.
Daniel.
Well, that's the thing, right? And we'll get to that the second part of my question. But yeah, there's this group of core loyalists who are running multiple agencies and initiatives. Todd Blanche, right? Who folks will remember, he was Trump's personal attorney. We saw him, in court doing his best with the world's worst client. And now he's the deputy attorney general. And he's also the acting librarian of Congress.
That
Clearly
seems like
trained for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
right? It seems like it goes together.
He's got the resume for that, and then Russ Vogt. I'm never quite sure. It is Vogt, I believe.
Is Vogt,
yeah. I'm never sure how to pronounce it. Russ Vogt, who had a huge hand in Project 2025. He's running the Office of Management and Budget, which obviously I think he flies under the radar all the time because for most people that is such a boring office, but it's also hugely consequential and super important. So he's running the Office of Management and Budget, but he's also the acting head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is probably an ezy job for him, seeing as he gutted it.
Right.
As it's totally
there's no more of it.
Keep the title, close it out. Yeah.
Exactly. Kash Patel is leading the FBI, but until recently, he was also the acting head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. That role is now filled by Daniel Driscoll, who is also the Secretary of the Army. So these folks are wearing so many hats, and we haven't even. The biggest one is Marco Rubio.
What could go wrong?
So Rubio, in addition to being, he's traveling the world as Secretary of State, which you'd think that would be a full-time job.
It seems like a lot.
Seems like a lot. He's also the acting director of USAID, which, okay, maybe that's easy again because they've gutted it. He's the acting archivist of the United States. I want that job. I actually really do want that job. That would be a sick job, and it pisses me off that Marco Rubio has it. He's the acting national security advisor, which is a very important position that should be handled by
the
somebody.
only position it should have.
Yeah, I mean, that's a position that you should have somebody full-time and qualified. So, like, you look at this, and obviously if you are MAGA curious, I love that phrase, or a true believer, you think, well, this is efficiency. We're cutting out redundancies in our government. All these people who previously you had, 8 people doing 8 jobs. Well, now you have 4 people doing those 8 jobs because, I don't know, either those jobs weren't important or these 4 people are just that good. What is your take?
I think it's a failure of Project 2025, among other things. I mean, the fact that they can't get people to fill, the reason this is happening is Trump doesn't have people he trusts to fill those jobs. And this was one of the things they were supposed to do, was find people who Trump could trust to fill those things. And the fact that they're relying on dual hatting now at the beginning of the presidency, I think is a bad sign for staffing going forward. Another thing that they talk about in Project 2025 is they complain that in the first Trump administration, he didn't fill these jobs because they thought it would be cheaper to leave them unfilled or it would be a matter of efficiency. And so instead what happened is the bureaucrats ran those things, or they didn't get taken care of, or policy didn't get enacted. They said that was he shot himself in the foot in the first term that way, but here he is doing it again, and I think doing it more this time around than he did the first time.
One thing that I think about when I think about the multitasking is, for some of these jobs, the agencies, they have been gutted, so maybe there isn't a whole lot to do right now, unfortunately, at USAID. But National Security Advisor, right? As we're looking at war breaking out between Iran and Israel, you need that position filled, and you need it filled. To have your Secretary of State pulling double duty is horrible for diplomacy and for war.
I think that's also dangerous when your defense secretary is manifestly unqualified,
right?
Can't keep a staff, doesn't
DUI
seem to know
hire
what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, so and all those things, and even something like the archivist position, which is a little bit like OMB. It's not something we think about a lot, but those records are really important, and it's also a matter of law. And those things are you have to assume they're not keeping the records that you would want, and they're required to, because the people who the archivist is supposed to be policing are it's the same person as the archivist. Right. No. Who's going to maintain the signal chats that they're keeping if Marco Rubio's on them? He's not going to enforce that on himself, obviously.
No, it really is, as we say down here, the fox guard in the hen house.
Pound fist flag, fire emoji.
So you write about Trump, his use of language. I mean, Trump is nothing if not a man of slogans and catchphrases and things you can put on a bumper sticker.
Very bigly.
And I don't know if it's his most famous line. It might be. It's certainly in the top 3. But since his
most famous has got to be "You're fired," right?
Well, so yeah,
do you think "Make America Great Again" has eclipsed that yet? I don't know.
I don't know. I still think people.
I think the top 3 are probably "You're fired," "Make America Great Again," and then third is "I Alone Can Fix It."
Well, maybe you're.
I think that is that was his whole pitch.
Yeah.
Certainly the first time around.
I'm the smartest. I'm the best. No one knows it more than me.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the one Trump rally I went to, that was I don't think he explicitly said "I alone can fix it" in those words, but that was a big part of his message, which is just who else do I'm your champion and there is no one else, right? You write about how we've over time seen that line go away, and lots of other slogans that we used to hear a lot have been replaced by some variation of a new slogan. When you see him at news conferences since he took office back, this time around, some variation of "I don't know anything," all right? I know nothing.
I haven't seen it yet.
Some form of evasion, or that's passing the buck.
Right.
What are we seeing there in that shift?
I mean, I think it is a lot of it is just evasion. They don't have answers to these things, and Trump is understanding they're unpopular and trying to distance himself from them. But it seems like I think it's a surprising change in his tone. It's surprising to hear him delegating those questions.
But why do you think he's doing it? Because it felt like for years, especially in 2016 and leading up, he always had an answer.
Yeah.
Even if he didn't have an answer, he faked an answer.
Well, that was the appeal, right? Is he would just give you the answer that he knew you want.
Right. And so did he? I mean, I feel like he was coached and he listened, which is also new to Trump, taking advice from somebody. But he's not responding with anything of substance, of acting as if he is the smartest. He knows the most about drones. He knows the most about the U.S. Army. He's now just going to, I don't know.
A lot more coy.
Yeah, and like, how did that happen?
This is a little different, but when he had the feud, well, the sort of one-sided feud with Elon, it was a little similar. I mean, it was so bizarre to see him. It seemed like pulling punches. You know, he said, I don't know if I'm in a good relationship with Elon anymore, but he wasn't unloading on it. And Elon is firing away tweet after tweet.
Epstein files.
And Trump was saying nothing. It's really bizarre to see him in that kind of passive mode.
It's bizarre seeing it, but I mean, I think it's because, this is my tinfoil hat coming on, because Musk really has something on him, and Trump knows he could not battle a lunatic like Elon Musk when it came down to it. Like, if it really came into both of them punching, because Trump has never went up against,
No,
Mothma,
I see what you're saying. I mean, there is for the first time, really, he has found himself in a confrontation with someone who is even more willing to shoot the hostage than he is.
Oh, and go to court. Like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
And really good at getting headlines, really good at controlling a narrative,
And
shaping a narrative. He's got fanboys.
As many, or if not more, resources than Trump. I mean, that's actually that's. I mean, I see the tinfoil hat.
Sure,
I see. But at the same time,
you see Elon backing down, though. He knows where the contracts are signed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a both and. They're both realizing that they're two of the most powerful people in America, which is fucking crazy. Like,
yeah, I mean, here we are playing armchair psychologist.
No, Daniel, I know I'm the best.
My read on it is that it's confirmation for me of something I've felt forever since Trump entered our politics, which is just that, like, he's never been interested in the job, and he ultimately finds the role of president entertaining, but he finds the presidency itself pretty boring. And
I mean, it made him $600 million just recently, that financial report that came out under presidency.
Sure, it's lucrative, but that's
he doesn't want to do the work, though.
He doesn't want to do the work, right?
Yeah, I think in the first term, what he wanted were the trappings. In the second term, he realized the profit potential, and he also realized both the importance of getting out from behind legal troubles by getting
out of prison, for sure,
and then also using the presidency to punish people. So he's doing all those things, but the other stuff still isn't really of interest to him.
Do you see this as a phase of Trump just kind of being, I don't want to say asleep at the wheel, but more subdued and more sluggish? Do you see this as being something he breaks out of and comes back with fire and fury? I know I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball here, but I guess we're 5 months into this, and I'm curious if you foresee a situation if 2 years from now Trump is even more.
He's falling upstairs right now.
Low energy, yeah.
It's a tough question. I don't ever want to. Every time I predict that Trump will be quiet, he does something outrageous. So that's a bad idea.
Don't do that, David.
Yeah, I wrote. There were several years ago. My editor was like, "It's been very quiet. Can you write a piece about that?" And the minute I published it, people were like, "You idiot!
Yeah,
what are you doing?" And lo and behold, I can't remember what happened, but something happened. So I'm sure there'll be ups and downs, but I also think there's something to the idea that he's diminished. He's older.
Yeah, he is.
He
turned
seems less interested.
79.
He just turned 79. Yeah. When we talk about catchphrases, there are these phrases that he relies on, and he seems, Stat, I think, has done these analyses about how the language that he uses has narrowed over the years to smaller vocabulary, smaller set of phrases. And I
wasn't
think
huge to begin with.
Yeah, but you
No, I'm
think
serious.
you think that, but if you go back and you look at interviews from the 80s, it's
going
recognizably
that far.
Trump,
Yeah.
but you're sometimes surprised by the complexity, the syntactical complexity of things he says.
I know I didn't like Trump after Home Alone 2 when he just didn't help Kevin. It was like, man.
For me, it was the Little Rascals. When he's Waldo's dad, dude, you look
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, what a deadbeat dad. Waldo, you're the best son money can buy. Like, that is such a Trump line.
I mean, it really set home for me not liking the dude was, The Apprentice, when that was taking it in there. But
I've actually never seen any of The Apprentice. I probably should, just, as a study.
And not the movie, but the...
No, I haven't seen the show. I haven't
show?
seen. No.
Okay.
I mean, have you ever seen?
I have not either.
Yeah, I know a lot about
What?
the.
If you watch Survivor, you watch The Apprentice too, because it was on it's network TV.
Yeah, man, I was too busy watching like weird Japanese game shows.
Oh,
honestly, what I
man.
was up to.
Jeez.
People like running through mud in furry suits.
And that's how Trump gets elected, Daniel.
Is me not watching The Apprentice.
Not knowing what we were about to get into.
Foreign labor replacing American
Yeah,
actors,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly. The American actors could have debased themselves just as well. Do you want to talk about crime, or do we want to linger on Trump a little bit more?
I mean, no, we can shift gears. I mean, I'm sure Trump's going to come up because, I mean, he's fucking God. But you've written recently, too, besides Project 2025, about, just crime and the perception of crime and what's happening. And that's one of the big things of Trump, right? Like, he is going to be strong on crime, back
American
the blue.
carnage, right?
I mean, it's with this. And I mean, we just saw it recently with right before the No Kings protests of just how tough he's going to be on this. And the LA riots,
Right, I won't let people disrespect our police officers.
Right.
This narrative that like, I mean, he did a Truth Social post about it recently, but it's also been a fixture talking about slogans and this idea that American cities are now third world cities.
Right.
This like you go to Los Angeles, you're going to Mogadishu, right? Right.
It's so crazy to think that.
It is crazy, but it's what's even crazier is how effective it's been in the minds of so many people, even people who don't vote for Trump or say they don't like Trump. Like I'm going back to, when I was a teacher, I would interact with, parents in many instances, and I was surprised at the number of parents who had a really warped sense of the world in terms of the dangers posed to their kids.
Yeah.
Like the amount of parents who were terrified, who were very restrictive of their kid, and I say kid, these are high school students, restrictive of their kids' movements in the real world without realizing that like the real dangers are online.
Right.
but they had this like it was like the stranger danger.
Well, that's where
for
they
sure.
saw the real world, right? Was online. That was the gig. And
Yeah.
I think that's the downside of it, is seeing all the Amber Alerts and stuff, which is real. All this stuff is happening, the perception. But it was happening back then too. I mean,
I was in a car like a couple of years ago, and it was like 10 p.m. and I was with a friend, and we stopped at a Sheetz, and he was like, "I'm gonna run in and give blah blah blah." I didn't have to go in, so I stayed in the car. Before he got out, he reached in his pocket and pulled out a Glock and gave it to me. I didn't know he was packing heat, and he was just in case, like, be prepared. I was like, what the hell? Like,
well, I mean, it's look back to when Rodney King happened, right? That was the first time, not the first time, but one of the with television in everybody's homes, seeing it happen, that somebody was being beaten by the police, and that was happening every day. It was happening all the time, and so now that everybody has it on their phone, you're able to see it constantly, so you feel like it's happening more. So you've written about the public perception of crime and the actual crime data. And according to the Gallup poll, it says 64% say crime is increasing. 56% describe it as very extreme or serious. And specifically, Republicans are especially likely, about 95%, to view crime as rising, where 29% of Democrats feel this way. What is this disconnect? How is it happening?
I think the media is really bad. Mass media in this age is really bad at crime for all the reasons you're saying. I mean, or you look at the coverage of LA, and what are people? They're not going to show people who are marching doing nothing. They're going to show Waymo cars driving. That's more visually interesting. That's what's going to make the front pages of the papers too. But then people think that's what's happening all over the city, and you're like, it's like 3 cars in a tiny. Which isn't to like endorse burning cars.
Sure.
But perspective is really important. And I think that's true also with like any kind of, it's true with violent crime. It's true with shoplifting. It's true with whatever. There was a study that I loved a few years ago. That was like, everyone believed that crime was going up around the country and in their city, but not in their neighborhood.
right?
It's never in your
gosh.
neighborhood,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think we do a really bad job of covering this. And when something is rising, we talk about it, and when it's dropping, no one cares because it's not a news story for crime to drop. And so I think that as a result, people kind of missed, and there's this huge drop in crime from the 90s until 4 or 5 years ago, and then a huge rise the last couple of years, and then now we're there in 2020, 21, 22, and now it's back down a huge amount. But you only really hear about the rises, and I think I understand why that happens, and I understand why that's what gets people revved up, but I think it's a real problem with the way we talk about it.
And a big part of that rise we saw was COVID. I mean, just economic instability in people's lives is a driver of crime and all kinds of bad social consequences. And like you're saying, now it's it's declining, and it's been declining for a couple of years.
It's wild how people perceive it too. So my town, I'm an elected official in the town of Elon, and for years we were the second safest city in North Carolina. And just recently,
What was safer than Elon?
man, it was this
Fayetteville.
really small. I forget
lot of soldiers
what it
down there.
was.
They got a lot of guns.
but it was like
Law
a
and order.
tiny little town. And just recently, we put out we made the top 10, but we are 6th now. And I don't know how it's determined, but our town put it out that we're ranked 6th. And man, people started jumping on there, being like, "It's because you have liberal city council members, and this is what's happening." And it's like,
What did you do?
Yeah.
You
What did
personally.
I do? And again, I don't know the rubric, but still, when you just put stuff out in the ether, people, man, it's clear they never took stats.
Yeah.
Well, talking about stats, I remember reading last year there was a FBI statistics were, the FBI data nationally was released, and there was some indication that sexual violence had increased. But I did like a little bit of digging further, and one of the reasons is that what constitutes a sexual crime has been redefined, has been expanded. So previously it's not that more people are necessarily committing sexual violence, it's that more people who are doing it are now convicted and are now charged because we have a greater understanding of what sexual violence actually is.
Makes sense.
But there's no room for that nuance.
Yeah. Well, crime data is such a mess, too.
Yes.
And it's I mean, the FBI data for the year is the gold standard, but it comes out usually in September or October of the following year. So we don't know the numbers for a long time. You're relying on partial data. There's all these, there's weird things in the data. Things get, a murder gets solved in the next calendar year. It doesn't get, all these things fall through the cracks. And I think it's useful for tracking trends, but it's really hard to draw hard conclusions about things like specific rankings of how safe a town is. But people want it to do those things. And a lot of reporters, I think, are not necessarily literate in the data as well. I'm sure I've made mistakes myself. And so we get warped impressions.
Sure.
Yeah, I wonder what are the there's this kind of tough on crime narrative, right? That is obviously fueled by this gap.
It's been huge since 2016, right? Or I guess it really took, in my eyes, being pressured as an elected official, but then seeing it nationally, was the summer of love, right? Like right after George Floyd, this like tough.
Is that called the summer of love?
Yeah.
Is that what people have I missed that?
Yeah, I mean that's just that's
Wow.
okay.
I
what's going on?
I was too busy watching Tiger King. I missed the summer of love.
There's some summer of love in Tiger King
There was a
too.
little bit
boy.
of summer of something.
Yeah, that's right. But it really felt like that is when for me it just really started getting on there. I started seeing more of the back the blue. Started seeing that blue thin line bumper sticker on everything.
Right.
And I feel like that has changed our landscape politically. And what are the consequences of this perceived crime gap?
I think it's a really dangerous.
You're good. You see, you stole my question.
Yes, that's still your question.
No, that was you did it better than I could. I was happy to give it.
Well, thank you.
I think it's a really dangerous dichotomy that we have to be either like tough on crime. We have to either accept higher crime or accept injustice.
Right.
Which is what people seem to want us to believe.
You think it's a real dichotomy or a false dichotomy?
I think it's a false dichotomy.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
One of my favorite stories I've written in the last few years was I went to Memphis and I wanted to see, we had this moment of awareness of police brutality followed by this rise in crime and a real panic. And in Memphis, murders rose very quickly, and they were high to begin with. The Memphis Police Department is really bad, as everybody saw after Tyree Nichols was killed. And I sort of wanted to see how those things intersected. And what you get is a lot of people who are in neighborhoods that are in some ways under-policed. They have really bad crime, but in other ways over-policed. Now, we want the cops here. We also don't want them to be abusive. So, I talked to a woman who was really active in her community. She talked about how she needed the police. She works part-time at a church, so I was inviting the cops in, trying to make sure they feel comfortable in the neighborhood, but also discouraged her son from moving back to Memphis because she was afraid he'd be beaten by police.
Wow.
I mean, you shouldn't have to choose between those things.
That's layered.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just funny too how people perceive stuff. Like Sarah Huckabee tweeted out that if LA was in Arkansas, this wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't be having this crime. And like Newsom responded with, "You literally have twice the homicide rate as California."
Yeah.
And it's like the perception, man. It is fucking wild how people just think things don't happen in their town, but it happens everywhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, and going back to kind of how our media environment is designed to have this kind of vicious cycle, like, you write for the Atlantic, and I will say the Atlantic is so much better at defying the whole "if it bleeds, it leads"
I hope so.
incentive.
Thank you.
Not that I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I think that, I mean, in the Atlantic, I think makes a concerted effort. It really prides itself as an institution on fact-based. This is what the numbers say. This is what, if you remove the spin, not that there isn't any spin, but if you dig a little deeper, I think there's nuance there in a way that is not in many other publications. But my question to you, as somebody who writes for the Atlantic, what kind of conversations do you have? Or, I mean, I don't know how often you talk with folks who write for other institutions that may be more to blame, institutions that don't have the same journalistic ethic.
Fox News, Carolina Journal.
We're a good team.
Sorry.
So that's I mean, because there are folks who I would say, like you, are doing their best to stem the tide, and there are folks who are aiding and abetting the increasing ignorance of the American public.
I think it's a wide range because there are definitely bad actors.
Yeah.
I also think, we have an advantage in that we can kind of pick and choose what we cover. Sort of the nice thing about the magazine legacy, even though we publish online all the time. When you're working at a newspaper, you have sort of there's a pressure or an obligation or a need to cover these stories, and so you can cover the story in a really fair way within from in the story you write. But because you are in the same sort of "if it bleeds, it leads" paradigm, just the coverage creates that thing. So people can be working with a great ethic, but the overall effect, I think, is still negative, and that's it's like a structural problem in the press, and I don't know how we solve that.
It's tough, man. It's really tough. I mean, we deal with it here, posting stuff, and people are like, they're paid by Soros.
God, I wish.
Man,
George Soros, if you're listening.
Show us the money. And I mean, just people have this perception of what they think is happening in the news. And you could show them 900 pages of facts, and they're just not going to believe you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a transparency problem. People don't understand what we do or how we do it because we don't show it to them. And I think it's really helpful to
how
get
do you
people
show
sense of
them?
it. I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is talking through it. This is like the counterpoint of me being like, well, individuals can do the right thing. If someone sends me an angry email, I try to respond to them every time. I want them to. There's a person reading that email, and like, if you make a valid critique, I'm gonna tell you that. And if I think you misunderstood what I was doing, I'm gonna tell you. Well,
that's why he turned off the DMs on Blue Sky. I get it.
I've noticed the New York Times has over the past year or two has started to try and explain to people when they break a story. This is how our sources. This is how we got the sources. This is how we did the fact checking. To kind of let people peek behind the curtain, and I think ultimately that's helpful. I think the thing that
it's late.
It's
late,
late,
it's too late.
and also the people. There's the people who need to be reading that aren't going to be reading it.
Yeah.
Because by the fact that you're looking at the New York Times and you're reading the New York Times, I think you're already a certain type of person who's interested in substantive reporting.
Right. Well, I mean, even to talk about Blue Sky, where the favorite topic is what the New York Times did wrong. I think a lot of times that stuff they're right.
That's the slogan for Blue. I think that that's under their logo.
That's so good.
Often you'll get to conversations. You're like, you're right. That headline was terrible. That headline's I do this myself. But who was it? David Shore or somebody had polling on the 2024 election, and the people who are reading the New York Times, the people who are reading a lot of hard news coverage are voting Democratic already. The problem is the people who aren't reading the news. So it doesn't matter if the New York Times was flawless. That's not reaching the people that you're worried about. I don't know what you do with that.
Yeah, I think that's what Jake Tapper tried to do with his book with Biden, was try to bring back some trust into a left-wing news outlet, to show that they were bipartisan, or they were just reporting the news, to bring back some trust in legacy media. And
You think he succeeded?
no, I still say fuck that guy. But,
Okay.
Well, what
that's
you
just
see
my
is a bunch of
personal-
people being like,
yeah.
a lot of right-wing media outlets being like, oh, now Jake Tapper tells us, where was he in the summer of 2024?
Right. and I mean, and he talks in the book that he was lied to, right? To try to give them some veil behind that it wasn't their fault of what they were doing. They were, but anyway, that's just how I feel. But you wrote about.
But before we get to protest, can I ask one more question? Because we're talking about journalism and writing.
I like this.
I'm curious to know a little bit about your writing process, your writing habits, because you
transparency. Here we go.
There we go.
There you
Let's
go.
do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Now what have I
We're
done?
gonna solve it now, y'all.
Exactly. This just became an interrogation.
Yes.
We will be the ones asking the questions. No, but you write and publish so frequently, and you are dealing with stories in real time that are big stories, important stories, and you're not just reporting what has happened, but you are tasked with offering insight to readers. You know, what this is what happened, and this is what you should make of it, and why it's important. And you do it really well. And I'm curious, like how long does it take you to get from somebody calls you and says, I assume this is what happened. Somebody says, hey, we need you to write about X, and you have, it needs to be done by this amount of time. Like, walk us through that process, if you're cool to do that.
Sure. Well, so I have been doing basically the same thing for a while, but since February, I guess, I've been writing our daily newsletter. So I'll walk you through. So today, a few things happened this past weekend. You may have noticed. And so I was logging on, being like, what am I going to write about? Like, how am I going to pick one topic?
Yeah. Like, where do you even start on a
Right.
Monday? Like, no, seriously. Like,
So I started, I had, 4 or 5 half-baked ideas, shot them to my editor, and we talked back and forth a little bit. And then we had a meeting at 9:45. So our team got on. We talked through the ideas, picked one that we liked, which is about really just narrating the last 12 days. By the time this goes up, you're going to be like, why are you still talking about this? Sorry, I'm making it time. But anyway, like going.
No, it's great.
Here's
No,
all the things
it's
that happened in the last
fascinating.
12 days and sort of, giving some analysis and framing this like this kind of chaos is something we saw in the first Trump term. This stuff is really unpopular. Like, people talk about it being a distraction, but if you distract something else that people hate, that doesn't really serve you. This chaos tends to bounce back on Trump. There's a reason he's unpopular when he's in office. So I went through that, worked on that, and then I think I filed a draft at like 1:45 or 2.
wow. How many, what word count, roughly?
That was probably 1,200 words.
Okay, wow. Yeah.
Usually I aim for more like 1,000, but this one ran
And
over
you
a
don't
little
chat GPT it.
bit. I don't. You got me.
yeah. Gemini.
She edited it, and then it goes through a fact check and a copy edit. They're working at the same time, and I was answering questions right up to about the moment I hopped in the car to leave Durham, and they finished it up without me. So that's a typical day like that. Now I've got a topic for tomorrow. While they were doing the fact check and the copy edit, I got a little bit of jump on that, so I probably got 400 words, which hopefully will make my day a little bit easier tomorrow.
So you're never off the clock. And in the sense that, when you're not writing, you're formulating and you're synthesizing.
I mean, sometimes I'm like, the news happened. I mean, this happened like with the Elon thing. I had 900 words in my 1,000-word piece, and Elon started tweeting about the Epstein files, and I called my editor. I was
Gotta
like,
go.
I think maybe we got to change course here.
Yeah.
Can you salvage the 900 words, or is that
We
just...
ran it the next day.
Okay, cool.
I was
That's
very
great.
glad. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but
Yeah.
that one it worked out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it is really just different of a daily column opposed to somebody who's writing a weekly opinion column. They can work on it, they can craft it, they can move it.
But that's the thing, is like, it's a news column, but there is, I don't want to say opinion, but like, again, interpretation.
Yeah, I'm trying to give somebody, like, ideally, like, I'm not telling them what to think, but sort of giving people a way to think about it.
Yeah.
That's how I try to think about that.
I love it. I'm kind of fanboying a little bit, but it's something that I think a lot of light, very little heat.
Good.
And that's
the goal.
And that's a rare thing in today's journalistic landscape.
Basically, if you are not reading David every day, you need to.
You need to.
And it's really not. I know probably a lot of our listeners read Heather Cox Richardson and other of our friends of the Holler, Tressie McMillan column. But this is a very, like, when I started, Daniel turned me on to you, and I don't want to say it's an easy read to diminish anything, but it is. It's an easy, understandable
you can find
read.
time for it.
Yeah, you don't have to have, like, graduated with a master's degree to understand these words, right? Like it really it resonates, and it really hits home. So
Yeah.
as we stroke David,
And he's a hard-boiled journalist. You guys grind a lot. I feel like you guys deserve some praise after what you've been through since 2015.
so we'll read a bit from one of his. So you can check
Perfect
this out.
segue.
That the protests are just starting. You wrote about this just a little bit ago, and it is protest season for everybody because it's getting warmer. But you comment on the rising wave of protest across the country, and you begin the piece by noting some members of the anti-Trump coalition worry that these demonstrations will bring about disaster. Protests are messy. Even when the majority of participants are peaceful, just a few bad actors can produce instances of violence, and big protests always draw a few bad actors. Observers have also worried about the optics of protesters carrying Mexican flags, lest the protests be seen as unpatriotic or anti-American. One overriding concern is that the even minor missteps by Trump's critics will give him an excuse to overreach further. I mean, there clearly is an effort to reduce these protests to a few bad apples or out-of-touch college kids. But if you look closer, this is me now asking David. He's done. I'm not going to give him my writing because but if you look closer,
You're cooking. Go ahead.
what's happening does feel bigger, right? Like we're seeing teachers, we're seeing veterans, we're seeing nurses and students, entire communities showing up. That suggests that this isn't just an isolated disruption. It's a broad disconnect right here. So would you agree? And what is your response to folks that raise the concerns of how we should interpret these recent mass protests?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was, when I wrote that piece, I was thinking through reading people who I respect, who I think were really sincere, who were very concerned about the protests, concerned they'd get out of hand. And I thought the answer can't be either stop protesting, because if you protest, you'll give Trump what he's looking for, or go home, because that'll also give Trump what he's looking for. And I think often Trump's critics can fall into this sense that he's invincible, or that the rules don't apply to him, or that it's always a win-win for him and a lose-lose for his critics. And I thought that can't be right. And I think seeing the number of people who were out on the streets this weekend, I think seeing the polling on the protests and how people don't approve of Trump's handling, they don't approve of the National Guard, they don't approve of the Marines, they don't approve of mass ICE raids. It has bolstered that faith. I just don't, it isn't always a trap. And even when Trump thinks it's a trap, he may be the one in the trap. And I mean, I think you see that. Just people are, time and again, when people see Trump in office, they don't like what they see. You know, he won with a minority in 2016. Republicans did terribly in 2018. He lost in 2020. They underperformed in 2022. Whenever he is the main issue, except for 2024, they lose. And I think 2024 is,
Even that's tricky, though.
That's tricky. He'd been out of office for 4 years, so he was a little bit distant. People were upset with Biden. People were upset about inflation. There's all these things. And it feels like, he gets back into office and people see the way he runs the presidency. And once again, most Americans don't like that.
Do you think it's fair to say he underperformed in 2024?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm not going to be confident about any conclusion totally for years. But it does feel like there are a lot of fundamentals that, for all the, charging Trump with crimes helped him, like, Nikki Haley would have won that election by much more. I
think so.
Yeah, for sure. But
He
Haley
underperformed a lot of these fundamentals.
Nikki Haley would do what Joe Biden did in 2020. She would have stayed in her basement and hung out and let the election run itself.
I know people that voted for Kamala that was like, I would rather vote for Nikki Haley.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy, because
Absolutely.
then again, I question if you know politics, but I have friends who have said that, and that's just nuts. The friends too. And you can probably guess what I'm talking about.
I mean,
It's so much as the vibes, Some the people vote on vibes.
So it's totally. I mean, I know somebody who told me that she didn't vote for Kamala. She voted for Trump, but she really wanted to vote for Michelle Obama. Now, Saul, that
voters are amazing.
There's
man.
your Rubik's cube, right?
No, they're not.
But it's vibes. It really is vibes, and it's. I wish I could have convinced her that Michelle Obama would want you to vote for Kamala Harris.
If only there was like a speech where Michelle Obama told people to.
But we're gonna find that, right? No, but I do think you're right. I do think it's all. I shouldn't say all. That's an absolute. But I think it's mostly vibes.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about Nikki Haley, and I think as we get further and further out from Election Day 2024, I think it seems astonishing to me what Kamala Harris was able to achieve. Actually, she did not win the election, but having been dealt, I mean, she came close to splitting the pot with like a 2 and a 7. That's you didn't win, but like that's impressive. Pivot to we go to hurricane season, or do you want to stay on protests?
No, we can pivot. I mean, one of the questions though, I mean, this isn't hurricane. It's not on this. This is where we go off script, guys. Great. So are we ready?
Put in 4-wheel drive,
Quinn. Okay. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but it's just we talked a lot about Trump and what's happened nationally and just how that is all happening. Do you see? So Daniel started doing early on after the election, called them mini Trumps, and
tiny Trumps. The alliteration, very important.
Tiny Trumps. # tiny Trumps. Here in Alamance County, right, local county commissioners, school board members, passing policy. Do you see from this like Project 2025?
Well, I just want to add, not just passing policy, but wanting so badly to emulate Donald Trump in affect, and I mean just not just be like him, but get as close as they can to being him.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are some examples of this trickling down to North Carolina?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, so people imitating you get everyone's yard sign just looks like the Trump logo now. Every Republican candidate seems to have the same design. What is it called? The Dave Act that the legislature was working on. Which is to basically to give all these powers to Dave Boliak, the state auditor, new state auditor, but very much emulating Doge. Like what can we do with Doge? And Doge is not strictly in Project 2025, but I think the Russ Vogt was able to sort of use Doge to achieve a lot of things that he wanted to do.
It almost ran interference for Project 2025.
Yeah,
because
very much so.
Doge could do the things, could be the scapegoat. It could be the thing that draws people's ire. And then when Doge leaves, the damage is done, and Project 2025 continues with and has not in the time and the process has not accrued any baggage.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think North Carolina is so often ahead of the curve, and if you think about somebody like Mark Robinson, I mean, the vision of Project 2025 is very similar to Mark Robinson's. You can talk about this on a lot of levels. You can talk about the policy level. You can talk about the methods, which I think is something they really succeeded in. But the most fundamental thing is the worldview, which is this very conservative Christian evangelical worldview, very anti-abortion, very traditional, and a vision where the state should be really involved in that. Like the government should be getting in your life, a very non-libertarian approach. And that's what Mark Robinson was doing as lieutenant governor. It's what he promised to do as governor, too.
Well, I mean, do you think, and I'm asking you to just, prophesize here. But like, again, Alamance County, taking local, one of our commissioners, right, his thing is we're gutting our libraries, we're cutting public schools. And I would bet, I don't have a lot of money, but
we're also not going to give funding to women's crisis
centers, family justice
violence,
centers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He didn't fucking read 900 pages plus all the executive orders of Project 2025. So how is it, what is the correlation here? How is it getting to these local county commissioners, but it's also stuff that's happening way up here in the federal level?
Well, so many of these things have been floating around for a long time. And there are things that, heritage people might have been pushing for in 1980 or 1988. And I think what's happened is, and a lot of them are going on at the local level. We've seen this stuff at the local level. They were really inspired clearly by the, Moms for Liberty kind of stuff. Project 2025 was inspired by the Moms for Liberty kind of thing. So in some ways, it's been flowing up to them. And I think the Trump era expanded their imagination. It gave them, it made them think there were things they had wanted, they had not really been willing, they hadn't thought were possible. And suddenly they're like, we can do this at a national level. But they've been trying to do that at a local level, at a state level, in red states for a long time.
It sucks.
Yeah, man. I mean,
God, it makes me so mad.
Well, you and I, Quinn, we're in it in terms of, we were posting about it, we're reading about it, we're preparing content about it and doing videos and all this stuff. But like, I asked you before we started how you guard
You
your
are the
mental...
media.
So are you, Dave? Are you trying to?
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm bringing you on the sinking lifeboat with me.
For sure.
We will be millionaires, I tell you.
Yeah, I guess we are the media in some way.
Yeah, I own it. We are, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, here with you and other people, and I think you kind of briefly talked about it earlier, but we're trying to change North Carolina or move North Carolina one conversation at a time.
But I think where I see the difference is that
he's smart and we're not.
Exactly. Yeah. My IQ tops
about
out. No. at the triple digits. I don't, like a high 90. No. Where I see the difference is that you and I are tasked with, you got to do something daily. And the issues that you're digging into, you and I oftentimes have discretion.
Yeah.
Over if we're feeling burnt out or we're feeling, oh man, this is such a bummer, let's talk about something happy. Like we can do that. And I don't know if you have as much leeway in terms of what you get to write about. And it may be the case that you may go a week or 2 weeks or 2 months or 4 years and have to, as a professional, be in some pretty depressing places in terms of what you're writing about and analyzing and offering up to people. And I before the show, I just asked you how you deal with that, how you cope with that. Your answer was did not inspire confidence, but it sounds like you're coping. It sounds like you're handling it, taking it all in stride.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say a couple things. One is people already hate the media. I probably shouldn't whine about it. I think it is in many ways a great privilege to be able to write,
absolutely,
for the audience I do, and to have the platform I do. And I don't want to be too self-pitying. There's something to be said for, in a crisis, it's nice to know what your job is. Like my job is to report and write on it.
True. I feel that with this podcast. Yeah, you're right. When sorry to interrupt, but that actually really struck a chord with me, because when the election happened,
I noticed
everybody around me. I mean, I had like a day where I was in the dumps, but I bounced back so much faster than everyone else in my life.
And it was wild too, because we didn't have, I don't know how your DMs are and emails and stuff with it, but after the elections, it just, our DMs massively filled. What do we do now? Where do we go?
And it wasn't hate. It was like,
they were looking for guidance.
And that was clarifying. Like that for me, that was, my work is cut out for me. I know what I have to do. And I do think that has been medicinal.
I don't know. I mean, that said, in the first Trump administration, I felt like there was a moment where I felt like I was Wile E. Coyote. Like I was running, and
right.
suddenly I looked down and, I'm way out over the cliff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid that this time around. I try to treat it as much as I can like a blue collar job. Like when I'm working, I'm working, and when I'm not, when I'm done, I'm with my family, I'm doing other things. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I sort of try to keep it structured like that. But I think it's a bleak time for a lot of people.
Yeah. And speaking of bleakness, one of your recent articles carries the...
That could be any of them.
Well, yes. This one, especially for North Carolinians, the subtitle for the article was "Citizens Could Be on Their Own This Hurricane Season." And for many North Carolinians, folks listening to this, I would say, there are going to be folks out there who are still up in Western North Carolina, and for a lot of them, hurricane season from last year still hasn't really ended.
Yeah.
There are areas that are back to business as usual. You can go to the mountains and have a great time, and we hope folks will. Western North Carolina, the governor said it himself, is
going this weekend.
Open for business. Quinn's going, meet him up there. But there are a lot of folks who are still recovering and still putting the pieces back together after Hurricane Helene. What should people expect this year, this hurricane season? And what's your message for communities that may have to cope with... have to weather the next storm under Trump 2.0?
I think it's a real mystery. Anyone who's been through this knows that it's wildly unpredictable and it's really uneven, and you never get as much help as you want as fast as you want it. I think people had understandable gripes with FEMA, but it's a huge storm. It's really hard for any agency to get in there and help.
Especially in that region.
Yeah, it's a disaster. That's why it's a disaster. I talked to Brock Long, who lives in Hickory and was FEMA director in Trump's first term, and who was out there on the ground. And he said, people are doing what they can, but it's a disaster. It's not for nothing. Mm-hmm. You think about how things went wrong last time, and then you think about how they might go wrong with a FEMA that's understaffed and underfunded and doesn't have professionals who know about hurricanes at the lead. I think it might be okay. We might be okay. It might be that the storms are not so bad. It might be that There's something that this state emergency managers who are really good can handle. But if they're not, I don't know what we do. And where FEMA really makes a difference is in funding. And that requires the president to free up funding. Will this president do that? I don't know. I mean, is he going to take a call from Josh Stein to free up aid? He might and he might not. And I think a lot of it depends on what else is going on in his world and how he's feeling about electoral politics and how vengeful he's feeling.
I mean, haven't they denied it already? Hasn't Stein asked for FEMA?
Yeah, Stein asked for extra aid to cover Helene aid from last year.
So did all of North Carolina's Republican congressmen.
Mm-hmm.
They all signed a letter, and Trump said no.
Yeah.
So it doesn't inspire confidence.
Oh, I like the F word.
But maybe let's land this plane with some rapid fire, something a little more cheerful.
Yeah. Do you have kids?
I do. I have two.
And so Daniel has asked this question to me real quick. I wasn't prepared for it, so you're going to be unprepared for this question.
Oh man, what did I ask?
What's your favorite Pixar?
Oh yeah.
I guess Cars. We've done a lot of that one. I don't even know. Oh man,
Rascal Flatts.
When my son was maybe 4, he wanted to hear that song 15 times a day.
Yep,
and there's the Sheryl Crow song and maybe Cars 3 sometimes. We heard a lot of that one too.
Have you seen the meme where it's like people playing Life as a Highway and like inopportune moments in movies?
No.
If you go online and look at it, it's pretty funny. People will, and what they do is they don't play the Rascal Flatts version. It'll be like them playing it on their own guitar, and they sound great. Like you're a really talented guitarist. They'll cue up a scene from a movie.
Well,
and it'll be...
Rascal Flatts isn't even the original artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who did it originally?
You're gonna make me put myself
Smash
on
Mouth.
out. No, it's like something you'd hear on Rock 92.
That's funny. I just assumed it was Rascal Flatts, but no, they'll cue it up and play it in a scene from a movie that is very earnest and very sincere or very like terrifying, and it just the song it's a meme of itself. But Cars is a good one, and The King is North Carolina.
Yeah, that's right.
Richard
yeah,
Petty,
very transparent Richard Petty
with very confused politics. Think about Cars. A question I always had is there's a Pope mobile in Cars. There's like a Cars Pope mobile, which implies the existence of like car Christianity. Right. I mean, within the Cars universe, like that's canon.
Yeah.
You don't have a car pope unless you have like a car Catholic church. There obviously was like a car Reformation. Martin Luther Porsche. I don't know.
There was someone had a meme of, they were like, one of those things you ask a bunch of members of a team something. It was some football team, and it was, does Lightning McQueen carry health insurance or car insurance? Oh. Which is an interesting ontological question too.
Yeah, we could spend hours on that one.
It's car insurance.
I think it probably is car insurance because the cars themselves,
they recognize themselves as cars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But who would be the payee? What if they got totaled?
Oh, that's right. Well, they would be dead.
That's just life
insurance.
Yeah. That's a great question. What do you like to listen to? What are your musical favorites?
Oh, well, I'm wearing my Fuss shirt today, I guess.
Yeah.
My favorite Durham band right now. I listen to a lot of, I don't know what we're calling it now, alt country, Americana.
Nice.
A lot of jazz.
Billy Strings.
I have dipped into Billy Strings, but I see the Billy Strings poster behind you.
Yeah.
I was raised on the Dead, so it's
Wow. You just,
Really?
yeah.
Now this is Quinn's moment.
Yes. Oh man, that's so exciting.
Friend of the devil.
How old are you?
37.
Yeah, dude, you and I, man, 100%.
What years do you like? What do you like?
Oh, right. So this is so we have some friends that have just started a podcast. Y'all should go check them out. The Foxfire Dispatch. Jenna, she's also our age. Gina, she was a deadhead, and her and I argued over this.
Yeah.
I like it all. I really do, and I think that's a bullshit answer. But she really will dig, the 77, late 70s, and I like that. Don't get me wrong. I like some Keith. Donna, I can take hit or miss, but
Sure.
it's still great. And 77 Cornell is a badass live show. But I'm a Brett Midland guy. I mean,
Interesting.
that was what my dad did.
Yeah.
That's the shows I went to. That was very I just like the Hammond 3 organ sound, Brent's voice, and you saw a shift of the Dead. You saw Jerry getting closer to Brent, and so that the way they just like vibe together was definitely a thing. And I just think LSD's better when it's in the 80s.
It's different.
It sure does when you listen to them. But, oh, dude, that's awesome. Man, that is really cool.
So Deadhead, into Americana, rock and roll. Are you a Gillian Welch fan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, whenever she comes, I've almost seen like the ballroom or whatever. I'm always checking her and Dave out.
Oh, would you see her last time through?
I did, and yeah, the circumstances were. I was too late to get tickets, and I was leaving I'm on the board of the school next door, and we had a board meeting on one of the nights, and it ended about halfway through one of her concerts, and I walked by and was outside the ballroom looking in, and I knew a guy working the box office, and he just kind of waved me through. And told me happy birthday, which it wasn't my birthday, but so anyway, so it was really cool.
Man, they were so good.
Oh,
they're always so good.
And my thing is, I love them both, but I really go to watch Dave play his guitar.
I was going to
make love to that thing.
Dave Rawlings will play sequences of notes that you have never heard anyone play before. Like they're never licks. He's going to play some combination you have never heard.
Just
like, man.
And he there are a couple songs he does especially where every variation, every time I hear it, it's that exact thing where I'm just like the method acting Cortez the Killer medley. That is maybe my favorite of what they do, and it's because every time I hear it, it's like he has like this transcendent experience with his guitar, and it's delicious. It's fantastic.
And E minor feels real good.
Oh yeah, absolutely, dude, absolutely. I'm just gonna shamelessly plug this. If you're not familiar already, check out a band called Chatham Rabbits.
I do know Chatham Rabbits.
Okay,
yeah,
that's my sister.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So I always any chance if that's cool that you already know them, but I'm always trying to help the siblings out.
My parents discovered them independently. They were my grandparents lived in this little tiny town in northern Michigan. Chatham Rabbits were playing at this little tiny bar. This was years ago. I had heard of them, but had not heard them. And my parents went to this bar, and they were like, "We saw this band from down where you're right, and we hung out with them, and they were really cool. You got to check them out."
Word.
Those are really the odds.
Word, yeah. No, they one of their bandmates is from up in Michigan, and so they go up there a lot. And gosh, what's the name of the sand dunes?
Sleeping Bear.
Sleeping Bear.
Yep.
Thank you. They love Sleeping Bear, and
this is a sound bit for the Chatham Rabbits. Sarah Alston, here you go, bro.
Right. That's it's not a paid sponsorship, folks.
Could be.
Could be. Something to think about, Sarah. Now, my birthday is coming up. Well, folks, this is coming up on time. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
David,
absolutely.
thank you so much for coming over to hang out with us, and it's been very enlightening and has helped me kind of make sense of some things that have seemed ambiguous. And
can we invite you back?
Sure.
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that would
and
be
you guys
awesome.
can talk about the dead more. You can.
Oh, dude, I'm like some days
You got to be careful what you wish for or what you allow.
No.
Oh, we can talk
Quinn has been
shows.
easier at this. I feel like that's one thing I haven't.
I mean, I've been beaten up. If y'all follow our socials, I'll throw Grateful Dead out there, here and there, and stuff, and it'll come. And I'm like telling Daniel, Daniel, all it's gonna take is one dead video to take off, and that family is gonna be about us. I'm telling you, and I'm committed to it. Like I am a deadhead. I'm also a fish head. Just got fish tickets 3 nights to Hampton. Really excited about that. Yeah.
But I noticed it when I got my haircut recently. I was talking to my barber, and I was like, "What do you like?" And he was like, "Oh, I like the Dead." I was like, "Oh, well, my co-host likes the Dead." He goes, "What's your podcast name?"
I mean, it's.
I was like,
you know,
"Whoa!" He didn't even know what
cool.
he was like. He's like, I just want to listen to it. I was like, "Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's
for
awesome.
sure.
We can make that happen." Well, David, we have a gift for you, a special gift. We have a Hometown Holler T-shirt.
Awesome.
It is a shirt you can feel good in and feel good about.
Yeah.
that's my pitch. It's a ethical supply chain from dirt to shirt, fair trade, Carolina cotton, and better than that, it has our logo on it.
Yeah.
It's a good fit. We won't send you home empty-handed. And folks, thank you for listening. If you haven't already, check out our Substack. We're on Instagram and all the other socials, which is you probably follow us there. But we launched the Substack like a month or a month and a half ago, and
every Wednesday get a column. Every Friday you get a Raleigh roundup.
And so lot to love there. And I guess by the time you hear this, we will be inching closer to our big season finale.
Yeah.
So
Josh Stein,
Governor Stein coming on the show.
He's actually coming up next after you.
Yeah.
Man, you didn't tell me I had to open for the governor.
Yeah, at least you didn't have to close.
All right. That's it for now.
Yep. See ya.